Hello. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for waking up so early. I know it wasn't easy. So my name is Costanza, and I work for the Swarm Foundation. Today we'll be talking about Web3 and the compromises that we make every day, because sometimes more than Web3, we are actually Web 2.5. So before we start, a few disclaimers. I'm not a lawyer, and this is not legal advice, and I do not represent any organizations that I am or I was affiliated with in the past. So why are we here today? The idea for this research came a few months ago when I was in Denver. A bit of context about me. I'm head of partnership at the Swarm Foundation, a decentralized storage and communication network. So my job is literally to talk to people, founders and devs, to see if we can work together implementing the Swarm network, a decentralized storage system in their architecture, so that we can make it censorship resistant and we can defend our privacy and we can defend our digital freedoms. So I was in Denver at a side event, and I was talking to the founder of a very well-known crypto project, something I'm sure everyone here knows. And so, of course, we were like exploring how we can collaborate together, what can we do. And so, of course, I pitched him the Swarm network. And his response left me speechless. Our community doesn't care about decentralization and censorship resistance. So, unfortunately, this answer is actually more common than you would expect. So in this talk, we will see that Web3 is actually a spectrum, and we will examine Web3 core values, the ideal architecture, and how those values will translate into an architecture, and the unspoken challenges for a proper Web3 adoption, and what we can do to move forward. So in case someone here is new to the space, a bit of summary about Web3 core values. Defining them in a concise and bullet point format is not easy, but let's see what the Ethereum Foundation says. First of all, we have decentralization. And this is because Web2 is dominated by a few players that control everything. In Web3, ownership should be distributed among builders and users, empowering individuals. Then we have permissionlessness to ensure that everyone and anyone, regardless of race, geographical location, and possibilities, can actually contribute to Web3. Then we have native payments. I don't think I had to explain it to anyone here, so I'll move forward. Trustlessness. This is underpinned by economic incentives to make the network sustainable, so that we can foster transparency and collaboration. Now, why does it matter? And I will see why it matters in the architecture. But because it also has transformative power for people. So first of all, we empower through ownership of assets. So it is a paradigm where individuals have control over what goes online and over the digital assets. And this is not possible where your content is being stored on Amazon, on Google, Oracle, or Microsoft. And this is very important. Secondly, censorship resistance. Again, if the content is being stored in a centralized way, you can't have censorship resistance because someone else is deciding for you when you go online and what goes online. Then we have ownership and control over governance. Again, this is not possible in the previous Web2 models, and it's very important to champion it today to give back control to people. And finally, we have a strong focus on privacy. And yeah, it's about the importance of personal data protection and empowering individuals to maintain control over the digital identities. So yeah, Web3 values are important because they encompass decentralization, permissionlessness, native payments, and they empower individuals. And this is why we're here. So question is, how does values translate into an architecture? So here we can see when building any app, it can be something super simple. It can be an NFT marketplace, a wallet, or anything. We have several elements to consider. The front end, which has to be decentralized. It's going to be a long year. So of course you need a layer 1, Ethereum, maybe a layer 2. You might need an identity system. You need definitely a storage solution to store and retrieve data in a secure and censorship-resistant way. So decentralized storage solutions ensure data integrity and eliminate the dependence on centralized servers. And that can also be for the front end. Sometimes you also need a messaging solution to ensure the exchange of data between the user and the app. And even better if that is a zero leaks messaging solution. Then you might need a computing power solution. You're definitely going to need query and APIs. And you need to put the code somewhere. So you need a code repo. And to run all of that, you need a decentralized hardware system. And in order to effectively manage it, you need a proper governance model. And to make it healthy, finally, we have the community, which is super important. A vibrant and user community provides feedbacks and helps you in making your product better every day. Now, all those elements are crucial for your projects to be truly Web3, and you can't skip a single one of them. So now, of course, like implementing such an architecture, this is like a very high level. It can be very different. It can be challenging because the tech is very new, and in some cases, is even experimental. So that's the problem, because sometimes some projects might choose to implement some components of their architecture in a Web3 way, but other components on, for example, AWS or Google Cloud. Or they can rely, for example, on YouTube instead of the decentralized alternative to show the videos. And while, yes, they do offer a reliable solution, I'm not saying it's not, it falls short of embodying all the Web3 values that we saw before. And because relying on those centralized providers, projects are essentially placing their trust in a centralized way to manage and control the infrastructure and powering the app. And that introduces potential vulnerabilities and risk. And it goes against all the principles that we saw before, because it might not be censorship resistant, it might not be permissionless. And this is the most common case where, for example, IP addresses are banned or KYC is enforced. So here we have an architecture where all the elements are in red and all the elements are being centralized. And it can be any Web2 organizations. Yeah, it can be the website for most companies. And in green, we have an architecture where all the elements are decentralized. And in an ideal world, this is what your app will look like. Now, unfortunately, we don't live in a ideal world yet. So most of Web3 projects fall somewhere here and there. Some elements are being decentralized, some others are fully Web3. And to achieve a fully Web2 architecture, projects should try to make all the components green. So now that means using alternatives to AWS, using alternatives to Google Cloud for hosting, storage, infrastructure, for the hardware, so that they can ensure that the power and control are distributed among the users and not to the big corporations. So now that we saw what an ideal architecture looks like, we can see why most projects are still not there. There is technological readiness, legal readiness, and lack of visions, community readiness. So tech readiness is a critical factor, and it has two aspects. So it is possible that the components of your architecture, all the pieces that you need, might not be fully developed by other projects. So if you need to use, for example, a query and API solutions, the one that you need is not still fully decentralized, so there is nothing you can do. On the other hand, it might be your readiness, meaning that when you are developing an app, you need to have a fully functional architecture, and you need to demonstrate a proven track record of low downtimes and robust handling, bug support. So in some cases, you have to leverage the centralized providers. But okay, while that is not good, it is important here to recognize that achieving full decentralization, it is often on the roadmap for projects. So when developers aspire to decentralize all the elements in their architecture, they might be bound by the constraints and resources that they have. So they must prioritize some aspects over some other aspects. So it is important here to emphasize that despite all those compromises, the primary focus remains on delivering a fully Web3 project that aligns with the principles that we saw before. And in that case, being Web 2.5 represents an interim compromise on the path towards achieving full decentralization. And of course, like as we evolve and the landscape matures and all the components become available, then we can make it. And in that case, for this project, embracing a Web 2.5 stage becomes a strategic compromise that they have to make. And that's fine, because they acknowledge that being fully Web3 is the ultimate object. And by advancing the development process, they are gradually integrating decentralized solutions in their architecture. So because of technological readiness, it is important to recognize that various degrees of Web3-ness can manifest, leading to diverse configurations. That can be, or however, maybe not decentralized, not fully permissionless, and it can be, they can lack in trustlessness. So in other scenario, whether it is your technological readiness or infrastructure providers' technological readiness, the commitment to achieve a fully Web3 compatibility is evident for both users and the community. And the community is actually supporting that, supporting all the efforts that the developers are making. So if that is your case, I want to say a big thank you, because it is a very difficult process to make. Then the second reason why projects might not be fully Web3 is legal compliance. So there are quite a few challenges that crypto projects have to face in order to be fully Web3, because the regulatory landscape is pretty difficult to navigate, let's put it this way. There is always a new regulations. We often say that tech goes faster than the law, and I think that this is the future, because everything not illegal is legal. But that also means that crypto projects exist in a gray zone. And while some degree of disruption is considered healthy, even by legislators, it can be challenging, because some projects might also be deemed illegal in some countries, or might be completely shut down because the law is not ready. So there can be various approaches to this. Someone might decide to build regardless of the implications and to challenge the status quo, no matter what. And they have this admirable determination to be fully Web3, no matter what. But someone else might prefer to take the safer path and to have an over-legal compliance team where they go beyond what is asked for them and implement more and more to make the regulators and the legislators happy. And this is not a black and white solution, it's not a black and white situation. And most projects fall somewhere between the spectrum. The important thing is that it is your choice. So some protocols, for example, analyzing a single protocol might not be the best thing because it will be legal advice and will not offer an example on how to proceed. So analyzing the human components, I think, is the best way. So often there is the desire to service as many people as possible. So that means that the project has to be approved, has to be legalized in as many countries as possible. So that means complying with legal requests, for example, blocking some jurisdictions in order to make the project available to everyone else. And also because the alternatives are, in the best case scenario, being shut down, in the worst case scenario, getting arrested. And those are like the choices that so many crypto projects have to make, where to fall in the spectrum. Now, as long as this is your choice, it's completely fine because nobody can decide what is your risk appetite and what you're willing to do, the miles that you're willing to walk in order to make your project available to people. But the problem comes when you rely on centralized providers, because then it's not your choice anymore. As there is, yes, the risk appetite, but there is also the risk appetite of the centralized providers that you rely on. And that is normally quite low. So for example, if your data is in a centralized providers, then they can take you down to comply with their legal requirements. So for example, they might end up blocking an IP address because this is what they have to do. And in that case, it's not your choice. So you will have to compromise, not because of you, but because of someone else. So that wouldn't be fair. And yeah, so far we saw why some projects are Web 2.5 for technical and legal reasons, which is completely legitimate reasons. But now we'll see my favorite reason why some projects are 2.5. So before I mentioned the founder of a famous crypto project saying that their community doesn't care about decentralization. But it's not the only one. Another crypto-native project, when I was pitching to use Worm, told me, I don't see the added value of using this rather than Google. And I was like, did I understand it? Like, did I understand it correctly? So yeah, that was my face when I heard that. And believe it or not, that can be a good thing. I can spin it in a good way. I want to be optimistic here for you. It means that the space is growing bigger and bigger every day. And it means that we are going mainstream. And this is remarkable. This is amazing. It means that there is a shift in the landscape, and more people are coming from outside. There are more individuals from a diverse background coming and joining. And they bring ideas, they bring perspective. Although maybe they don't come for the tech, because they don't see the tech, the added value of the tech, but still they're bringing here, and this is the first steps toward going mainstream. And yes, there are a few challenges, because many of those newcomers are enthusiastic about the possibilities, but we need to educate and we need to showcase to them why that matters. And this is an opportunity that we have to make Web3 growing again and align it with the core values that we saw before. So we need to prioritize education, community awareness, and community engagement. So basically that means making a bridge between Web3 and newcomers. So first of all, we need to focus on education to make it happen, to empower newcomers. Then we need to foster an inclusive community. So making sure that everyone is engaged and everyone is involved. And finally, we need to keep each other in check, because I drafted before an ideal architecture. I'm sure that I have a blind spot. Everybody has blind spot. And the only way that we can overcome them is to have frank and honest conversation, giving feedback to each other and keeping each other in check. So in this way, we can build a Web3 ecosystem that is not actually Web 2.5 and that can go mainstream. So to recap, we saw what is required for a project to be fully Web3, and we analyzed the three main elements: technical readiness, legal readiness, and community readiness. So point is that revolutions don't happen overnight. It takes time and it takes effort to build the revolution and the internet that we want to see. So in my opinion, as long as Web 2.5 is on the path towards Web 3, it's fine. It's a compromise we need to make to get where we want to get. And with that, thank you so much for everyone. And if you have any questions, I think that we still have a few minutes left. Questions, anyone? Cool.
I have a question, but it's not. Oh, it's working. C'était quoi la question? What your enterprise proposing to solve this problem about? Yeah, all you say. What your enterprise is proposing a solution? What kind of solution are you proposing?
Well, ideally, I would like to get to have this. So in order to be fully Web3, you need all the components out there, from the front end to the decentralized hardware, to making sure that your data is stored in a decentralized way, to having a code repo that doesn't go down like GitHub. So this is the final goal. Now, in order to get here, you need to understand why you're not here, because there might be several reasons. So maybe, for example, if you need to integrate a piece of your architecture and there is no decentralized alternatives to what you need, then you need to look into the tech readiness and making sure that we are developing the right tools. If the reason is that the people behind the project don't see the added value of decentralization, then we need to educate them. It's about understanding why we're not here. So why are we here? What are the components that bring us here? And then trying to understand how we can solve that problem, because there is no one solution fits all.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Maybe other question?
Cool, thank you so much, everyone.